Shalom, everybody. How are you doing today? Monday, August 3rd. Happy to see you, happy to have you, and we're glad that you can join me today. Some of you may be watching during the afternoon on the East Coast of America. Some of you may be watching here in Israel. It's either 1:30 where you are in America or it's 8:30 p.m. here in Israel. But thank you so much for being with us, and really appreciate it. Tonight I wanted to dedicate this shiur, this lesson, this Torah lesson tonight in Pirkei Avot for the refuah shlema of a very special rabbi. His name is Rabbi Yerachmiel Shapiro. Rabbi Shapiro is the rabbi of Moses Montefiore Anshe Emunah in Baltimore, Maryland, a congregation I know well, a congregation that I served for almost 10 years before our family made Aliyah in 2010. And in 2010, Rabbi Shapiro became the rabbi of Moses Montefiore Anshe Emunah. In the last several days, he received a very difficult but treatable, thank God, diagnosis, and we are praying for him. We're praying for his refuah shlema. He should have a complete and speedy recovery. We're praying for his dear wife, Dr. Helene Shapiro, that she should get comfort and patience and all the positive energy that we can send today. We also pray for his beautiful children. I think there are 4, Bli Ayin Hara, if I'm not mistaken. And we pray for the congregation that Rabbi Shapiro should be able to return quickly with his usual gusto, with his usual positive attitude, his usual love for the entire congregation, his usual embrace of the entire congregation, and all of the Jewish community in Baltimore and beyond. So a refuah shlema to Yerachmiel ben Rachel Leah, Rabbi Yerachmiel Shapiro in Baltimore, Moses Montefiore Anshe Emunah. Complete and speedy recovery to you, my dear friend. And let's all pull for him today and every day, and we should only hear good news, God willing. So, today we are looking at Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, and we're looking at chapter 2, Mishnah, or teaching number 13. Now, I have about 10 different volumes of Pirkei Avot on my shelf. I'm looking here because that's where they are, but you can't see them, but I can, and that's a good thing. And this Mishnah, this teaching, is not always teaching number 13. For one reason or another, in one book it's teaching number 12, in another it's 11, in another it's 13. Anyway, this is the idea. The idea is that a prominent rabbi in his time, and still studied today, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who lived during the destruction of the Second Temple. He instituted many decrees to help the Jewish people revive after the destruction of the Second Temple. You can imagine how low the morale was after the Second Temple is destroyed, after 420 years, something like that. So he really had to work hard to get the people reinvested, re-hopeful, praying again, believing in God again. This was not an easy thing, but Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the great leader at that time. He was the youngest student of Hillel. We've studied a lot about Hillel, and he lived to be 120 years. Of mir gesagt, as they say in Yiddish. I should only say that about me and everybody else. You should live to be 120. Somebody once said you should live to be 120 in 6 months. Nobody should go suddenly. Okay, whatever it is, he lived to be a ripe old age of 120. It is said in the Talmud that wherever he was, shopping, malls, supermarkets, he was the first one to greet everybody. Nobody greeted him before he greeted them. Whether it was a Jew, somebody who was not Jewish, he was the first one. And it was also said about him that he knew every text, every Jewish text that there was at that time, and he still felt like he only knew a drop in the ocean of Jewish knowledge. That's humility. He knew it all, and he felt like he didn't know any of it. So that's something to emulate. Anyway, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had 5 superlative students, and he sends them on a very interesting mission. The names of the students, just remember this for the exam: Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yehoshua, Rabbi Yosei HaKohen, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Elazar. Okay? Each one of these 5 stellar students was a great Torah giant in personality at that time. Each one would have gotten like an Academy Award for the best rabbi, the best student, the most scholarly, the most intelligent, the most approachable, the most humble, each one. And he had 5 of them. Imagine just to have one, but he had 5. So he sends them out on a very interesting mission. And that mission is to go and to come back and tell him, what do you feel is the greatest characteristic that a person should have? What is the best path in life that a person should have and buff and polish? What's the best way to be in life? Okay, so here's how the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, chapter 2, Mishnah teaching 13. Amar lahem, he says to them, to these 5 stellar, amazing, superlative students, Tse'u ura'u, go out and see, go out and take a look. Ezehi derech tova, what is the best path, the best way, sheyidbak baha adam, that a person should cling to. In other words, go out. So you would say, go out where? Just go out? Well, I'm imagining all these students were busily sitting in the study halls, what we call in Hebrew the Batei Midrash, the Beit Midrash, the study hall. And they were probably sitting there many, many hours a day. That's how they became the great people they became. You don't become that great just sitting an hour a day and study. You immerse yourself, you study, you review, you repeat, you learn new things, you repeat and review them. Takes a long time to become a stellar student of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So he says to them, go out, leave the Beit Midrash, leave the confines of the scholarly books and all the scholars and lecturers, go out into the world and go see what is the best path for a person to follow. Now, this is a very interesting thing, that the idea of go out and see. I remember my very first, it was actually the second interview after I became a rabbi, and it was an interview, I'll tell you exactly where it was, in Stamford, Connecticut. I have many dear friends in Stamford who watch every week, some of them who are watching right now. And in Stamford, Connecticut, my first interview, people asked me in the committee, our senior rabbi, that time was Rabbi Joseph Aaron Kranz of blessed memory, our senior rabbi has many warm relationships with the Christian community. Is that something you would see yourself doing with him? And I said, after a pause, I said, I've been in the cocoon of Yeshiva University for 8 years. I don't even know what that would mean. I've been with Jews. I've been with Orthodox Jews. Now you're asking me, how would I relate to the Christian community? I don't know. I really don't know. The follow-up question. Rabbi Adler, you probably know that our senior rabbi has a very warm relationship with the African American community. Do you feel that's something you could join him to do and do various programs, et cetera, with the African American community? And I said, feeling like I'm blubberingly repeating myself, I said, I have to be honest with you. I've been at the cocoon of Yeshiva University for 8 years. I haven't really dealt with the African American community. There was a strong Puerto Rican community at Yeshiva University in the neighborhood, but I don't know how I would feel about that. I have to be very honest. So I felt that the interview was ready to tank. But thanks God, thank you very much. Somebody, I won't mention the name, you could write to me personally, I could tell you who it is. Somebody at that committee said, you know something? He's really not sure because he's been in the cocoon of Yeshiva University for 8 years. I really like his honesty. I like that. I like his honesty. It shows a lot of integrity. Anyway, thank God this person said it. I think it kind of moved things in a very different direction. And then I went on to, thank God, enjoy 7 wonderful years in Stamford at the Agudath Shalom Synagogue. So if you're in that synagogue or watching from Stamford, hello. And that's a story from the local shul right there. I mention this because I needed to go out of myself. Tse'u ura'u. go out and look. I had no idea what the committee was talking about. I needed to go out and look. Go out and see, what does the rest of the world look like? And that's what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is telling his 5 stellar students. You've got to go out into the world. You have your Torah values. You have your Jewish values. Go out into the world and see, are they the same values? Is it very, very different? Go out and see what people think is the most supreme value that they can have and then work on. So this is what he's telling them. Go out and see. Go out and take a look. Get out of the Beit Midrash. Get out of the study hall and take a look at what's going on in the world, because what's going on in here in the study hall is not all there is. There's a whole world out there. Go out and take a look. Okay? Have I beaten this dead horse enough? And I would say yes. So now they come back with their responses. However, the next line, after he says, go out and see what's the best path, what's the best characteristic a person should buff and polish and work on, it says, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says. So I thought as I was preparing this, does that mean they actually did go out and they determined what for them was the best value, the best characteristic of a personality? I guess because he told them to go out. But interestingly enough, it doesn't say they went out and they returned with the following. It just says each of the 5 returned with one particular characteristic that they felt after, I guess, going out in the world and seeing, that they felt was really the finest part of a personality that a person could cultivate. Okay? So, did they go out? I guess so, because he asked them to go out. But just interestingly enough, you may look at other texts that explain this, and if so, let me know either now or you can send me a message, Rabbi Adler in Israel @gmail.com, or on Facebook or iMessenger, whatever. Let me know if they actually didn't go out, but they already surmised what for them is the best characteristic. Anyway, so Rabbi Eliezer is ayin tova. He says you need a good eye. What does that mean? Go to Australia where everybody says, good eye, mate, good eye? No. Does it mean that your eye should be like 20/20? Or here it's 6/6? It's a different measurement. What does it mean to have a good eye? So here's what some of the commentaries pour into this notion of having an ayin tova, to have a good eye. They say it means to have a generosity of spirit. It means to look other people's fortunes, to see how good they're doing, and to be happy about other people and how good they're doing, instead of being jealous. It's easy to be jealous, and it's almost destructive inside to be jealous. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't help you, doesn't help anybody to fill the world with jealousies. But somebody with an ayin tova can appreciate that, wow, look at the beautiful car. Look at the lovely education these people are getting in a day school or whatever. Look, they got a beautiful new job. Well, I wish I had that job, but you don't. So the person with an ayin tova, the person with a good eye, can look at other people's fortunes and be happy about them and congratulate them and say, I'm really thrilled and happy for you, without feeling a grudge or resentment about it. Somebody with an ayin tova, somebody with a good eye, they view everything in life from the vantage point of kindness and compassion. Somebody with a good eye is forgiving to others easily. Somebody with a good eye has an unselfish spirit. Somebody with a good eye feels good about helping other people. They feel good. It's not a put on. If I can help somebody else, I'm not looking to get mitzvah points somewhere. I'm really doing it because it's intrinsically making me feel good to help the next person. And one commentary says, what does it mean to have an ayin tova, a good eye? It also means that the person forgives easily. They forgive easily. And I think that's a very nice and positive aspect. So, in the interest of time, I want to tell you what the other great students came back with. Rabbi Yehoshua Omer, Rabbi Yehoshua says, Chaver Tov, to be a good friend. It's very nice to have an eye, a good eye, ayin tova. His feeling is that the best part of your character is to develop to be a chaver tov, a good neighbor. And like a good neighbor, well, it actually doesn't mean neighbor, it means chaver, a good friend. A good friend. We'll get to another response in just a moment. Chaver tov, what does it mean to be a good friend? To be a good companion. Somebody that would call upon you to just hang out. Let's go mail a letter. Remember those things? Let's just go have a good time, and you're easy going, and you're happy to go here, you're happy to go there. You're a good friend. Somebody once described a good friend as somebody who can double your joys. In other words, when you go to their simcha, when you go to their joyous occasions, you almost double their joy because you're such a good friend. And because of your good friend, you can share or half, H-A-L-F, their sorrows. Because you're so caring and you're so considerate and you're so present that you're taking part in their sorrow, and it almost feels like it's almost half the sorrow instead of the full sorrow because you're such a good friend. A good friend, somebody that people can lean on and that you can lean on them. You remember that great song, Lean on Me? Very, very important song, and the only one that I can play the intro to on the piano. A good friend, somebody that will try to keep you positive, try to keep you from bad things. A good friend is somebody that can be friendly, cheerful, beloved, and a good friend is somebody that will find the right words to give you constructive criticism. So you say there is no constructive criticism, there's only criticism. And the answer is no, there is constructive. You have to say it in the right way, with the right face, with the right facial features, and show you care, and that's why you're offering some critique. But a good friend is happy to offer careful critique, and a good friend is happy to receive carefully worded critique. So that's very, very important. Says Rabbi Yoshua, Chaver Tov, very important feature. Now, Rabbi Yosei Omer, Rabbi Yosei says, what's the best part of your personality to buff and polish and really work on? Shachen Tov. I knew we'd get to that. Shachen Tov, to be a good neighbor. And I'll invoke it now, like a good neighbor. State Farm is there. Are they still in business? I have no idea. I'm 6,000 miles away, so I would know. But you'll let me know. Yeah, like a good neighbor. What did Mr. Rogers say? Won't you please be my neighbor? He knew how important being a good neighbor is. So what is a shachen tov? What is a good neighbor? Shachen tov, a good neighbor, where you can learn so much from each other. A good neighbor, you help each other physically. Bob, Carol, can you help me with this heavy ladder? I've got 10 bags of shopping in my car. Would you take a few moments and please help me with it? That's what good neighbors do. Good neighbors, they help each other physically. They can help each other emotionally. They be there for each other. They can help each other spiritually in all kinds of spiritual matters, very important. A good neighbor can be closer to you, not just spatially, but they can be closer to you than a good friend because you're right there. Now, what is a good neighbor? Somebody who lives exactly next door to you. Could be somebody who lives down the street. A good neighbor can live 3 blocks away. They're still a neighbor, still a shachen. Shachen and the word shchuna, neighborhood, they have the same root. So it's an interesting question. If you had a chance to buy a house, a lovely house that you can afford, but the neighbor or neighbors are not so good, you heard about it. Or you could buy yourself like a house that's okay. It's okay. I can afford it. But you have excellent neighbors. Excellent neighbors. That's for what you've heard. Well, what would you take? How important is it for you, for me, for others to have good neighbors? So that is his feeling about what's the most important path. What's the most important part of your character to work on and to cultivate. Other people say, what does it mean to be a shachen tov, to be a good neighbor? To be in a place, in a neighborhood that has your spiritual values. It has the infrastructure that you need. For example, you need a synagogue, you need a school, you need kosher stores, kosher restaurants, a mikvah, you need a butcher shops. It's good to be in a neighborhood where everybody is kind of rowing in the same direction. Sometimes people call that a Jewish ghetto. A Jewish ghetto. And there are many places around the country. There certainly are in Israel, right? Tons of places are Jewish ghettos because mostly Jewish people here. But in America, there are many places that are Jewish ghettos. In Baltimore, there are places where the Jews, the Orthodox Jewish community, for example, is heavily represented. And some people say, is that good? Well, on one hand, you have a neighborhood where people are all moving in the same direction, people that can support each other spiritually, etc. On the other hand, is it better to live in what they call here in Israel a mixed community, where there are religious, not yet religious? Which is better? That's for you to decide, and you can let me know if you're interested to let me know. But Shachen Tov, to be a good neighbor, that's a very important part of the story for Rabbi Yosei. So here comes the fourth student, Rabbi Shimon Omer. Rabbi Shimon says, what's the best characteristic? What's the best path? Haro'eh et hanolad. Somebody who can see the consequences. Somebody who can see the consequences. Haro'eh et hanolad doesn't mean somebody who is a prophet, Prophet, or somebody who can look into a crystal ball and see the future. He's talking about something which I think is much simpler than that, and that is to be able to just see down the road and see that your words and your actions, what are the consequences of these words and actions? Rabbi Shimon said, you have to think ahead. Think ahead. Look down the road and see what the consequences of your deeds and words are. To see how can you prevent something from happening? How can you think of the shame and the guilt that you might feel if you do or say something? Can you look down the road, play it out for yourself, and then not do it because you say to yourself, oh my gosh, if I do or say the next thing, this is what's going to happen. Here's how people will think about me. Here's how I'm going to look, etc., etc. For him, this looking ahead, not so much planning ahead, but looking ahead, forethought, to remember things that you may have said or done similarly to what you're ready to say and do again. What were the consequences back then? Will they be the same now? So he says you have to be so careful to think a little bit ahead and to wonder, how is this going to play with your friends, with your family, with yourself? To you, it might be a simple decision, but look ahead. Look ahead. How is it going to look? How will it play? That's for this great student. Rabbi Shimon says, you have to look ahead. Ha-ro'eh et hanolad. One who sees literally the not yet birthed. I don't think I've ever said that word in my life, not yet birthed. Anyway, so here's the final student, and then we'll have to see Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. What does he think of all this? Nice students, they all come back with a different response. Interestingly enough, would you have expected at least 2 of the 5 to come back with like the same response? I don't know. I think I might have. Why not? You know, it's an important thing, so maybe 2 people out of 5 feel it's important. But they all came back with 5 different paths, if you will, 5 different characteristics that's worth buffing and polishing and cultivating in a person's life. Here is Rabbi Elazar, the 5th final student. What does he say is this best path? Lev Tov, a good heart. What does that mean? To go to the doctor and make sure every month that everything is fine and ticking and good? Is that what he means by a good heart? Maybe, but I doubt it. He means spiritually a good heart. To have a good heart means, according to many of the commentaries, to be patient, to be tolerant. The heart, some people say, is the motivator of the body. Others might say it's the mind. Which is it? The mind? The heart? Good question. to reflect things upon your heart before you make a decision, to put them on your heart. I hear many Christian friends speaking in that kind of terminology. I thought about it, and I placed it on my heart, and then I came up with the following decision. In actuality, we find that phrase in the Shema. You shall place all these things which I teach you today, place them upon your heart. It's got a clear Jewish origin of putting things on your heart. To have a lev tov, a good heart, means you have an intuitive grasp of the good in every situation. It's a lovely way to be described. Wow. You're kind, you're empathetic, you're selfless if you have a good heart. You're patient, you're soft, you're considerate. In general, you have a happy frame of mind. I saw one commentary where it says you have a festive frame of mind. You're just happy to be alive, happy to be there for people, happy to help others no matter what they need, just happy to be with people, happy to embrace people, happy to do stuff for others. Have a good heart, lev tov. How many funerals have we gone to? Unfortunately, we have to go to funerals. How many funerals have we gone to, and the person who passed away is ultimately described as somebody who had a good heart? Or sometimes they're described as having a big heart. Does that mean like a big with aortic valves and all? Doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean a physical big heart, but you could tell the way they live their lives. Just looking at them, you can tell this person has a good heart. This has a big heart. So that's a very, very important thing for the fifth of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's students, is to have this lev tov. So, which one would you choose? Would you choose any of these five? Would you choose another good characteristic to have in your life, to cultivate, etc.? If you would, you can write me. I'd be happy to write you back, etc. Would you be interested to know what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai felt was the most important? Okay, I'll tell you. Amar lahem. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says to them, these five students who either did go out of the study hall or they didn't, and they felt intuitively these are the five important things. Amar lahem, he says to them, Ro'eh ani, I can see, I can evaluate, et divrei Elazar ben Arach midivrechem. I can see everything that the first four of you saw in what Rabbi Elazar ben Arach saw when he said to have a good heart. Why? Shebichlal divarav divrechem. I prefer the words of Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, the lev tov, the good heart, for your words are included in his words. So, what does he mean to say? He means to say that a person with a good heart is usually generous, ayin tov. A person with a good heart is usually a loyal friend, chaver tov. A person with a good heart is generally a good neighbor, shachen tov. A person with a good heart is generally calm enough because of his disposition or her disposition to weigh the consequences of their actions. And in that sense, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, the answer of lev tov encompasses every one of the other answers. Makes sense to me. Lev tov, boy, if you said to me, your neighbor is somebody who has a good heart, I would almost say to you, that's all I need to know. That's all I need to know. They got a good heart. There's a lot of train cars that follow that. If that's the engine, there's a lot of beautiful character traits that come with a good heart. So to close, I would say that today, I was looking at today's edition of the Jerusalem Post. We get it delivered every day, which I really like. And it had an obituary for somebody that I never heard of, but they quoted a verse in the book of Proverbs, Mishlei, and this morning, and this is what it said. Well, it didn't say anything. I had to look at it. Mishlei, Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. On the day that I'm teaching this, it had the following phrase from the book of Proverbs. Quote, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. The heart is the pivotal force in focusing thought and desires away from the negative and towards the positive. Is that interesting? Coincidence? Probably not. But how nice that I found like this phrase that kind of wraps up everything Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai felt about the fifth student with his answer of how important it is to have a lev tov, to have a good heart. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Dear friends, thank you again for being with me today. Once again, a refuah shlema, a complete and speedy recovery to my dear friend, the dear friend of so many people in the Baltimore Jewish community and beyond in Baltimore, to Rabbi Yerachmiel Shapiro, Yerachmiel ben Rachaleah. He should have a complete and speedy recovery. God drench the congregation, his family, and everybody who knows him with good thoughts and good prayers, so that Rabbi Shapiro can leave the hospital quickly. He might have already done so today, and get back to his congregation and continue to love them and embrace them and be their spiritual guide and their spiritual leader for many, many years to come. Amen, amen, amen. Have a wonderful day. Thank you again for being with me today. Take care, everyone. Have a great week. Stay happy and healthy. Shalom.